Violence is everywhere around us. It can take many forms: men's violence against women, criminal violence, or clashes between protesters and the police during public disorder. What all these forms of violence have in common is that they cause suffering, create fear and insecurity, and they may even fuel extremist agendas or weaken the rule of law. In other words, violence can undermine local, national, and global security.
At the same time, lawful violence, often referred to as the use of force, is crucial to establish and maintain security in society. This is the domain of policing. And policing is not only done by the police, but also by others, like municipal officers, neighborhood watches, security guards, and other public and private actors. In the track Violence, Interventions and Policing, we concentrate on interpersonal violence and the policing of it. We explore how and why violence happens, or, as importantly, doesn't happen. Think of men's violence against women, or the violence committed by members of criminal organizations, but also public disorder and riots, as well as police use of force and civilians' violence against the police. Our approach is interdisciplinary, combining criminological, psychological, public administration, policing, and sociological perspectives. We take a comparative, global perspective because we can learn from various social, political, and cultural contexts that influence the behavior of people who commit violence. And apart from offenders, our attention also goes out to victims. The process in which interpersonal violence occurs is often subject to a dynamic between them and offenders. Without victim blaming, we do examine the agency they have. Lastly, we also focus on the programs and actors that intervene against interpersonal violence, in particular police and other policing actors. How do they derive their legitimacy so that the public will accept their interventions? What shapes their effectiveness? What if they commit violence themselves? Can it be legitimate for them to do so? We have 4 specialization courses to delve into this.
Start with Introduction to the Study of Violence and Policing. Here we discuss questions like: why have some forms of violence, like homicide, decreased in many parts of the world? What are forms of policing across the globe? And what makes these forms more or less effective and legitimate? The second course is Gender-Based Violence, where the main focus is on violence against women in both the private and public sphere. We discuss, for instance, femicide and the prevention of it, but also honor-based violence and street harassment. Furthermore, we consider how police respond to these forms of violence and how the role of diversity in police organization relates to effective policing. Third course is Violence in Society. This course is based on the idea that patterns of violence reveal how society functions, what values and norms people uphold, and how society can be governed through policing. Think of questions like: what forms of violence are people willing to tolerate and why? And about policing, what is the basis of the authority of the police and how do they work to maintain that? We conclude with the course The Violence Policing Nexus. This one focuses on how various security actors relate and respond to one another. So think of police, neighborhood watch, private security companies and vigilante groups. We also study legal frameworks and technologies. Think, for instance, of the circulation of weapons in society and issues of digitalized surveillance. Finally, we connect the violence policing nexus to forms of prevention, intervention, and healing processes. With its focus on the relationships between violence, interventions, and policing, this master track will equip you with the necessary academic skills to analyze interpersonal violence and the policing of it, as well as critically evaluate research on the topic.
Knowledge on this is regarded as increasingly important within society and by many public and private organizations. Think, for instance, about research and policy positions at ministries and the police, consultancy companies, and civil society organizations for victims and survivors.
Whether you want to understand the roots of violence, explore the role of policing, or design effective strategies for intervention and prevention, the specialization Violence, Interventions and Policing prepares you to address one of today's most urgent challenges: reducing violence and strengthening security in society.